Hello and welcome. I literally had the idea to do this video about 15 minutes ago, and the reason for that is because in 2 days' time I go back to school, and for the next 6 months pretty much all my spare time will have to be dedicated to, exams, studying, that kind of thing. So I probably won't get much time at all to do YouTube videos, to go on my computer and make them. So before I depart, so to speak, I'm going to give you this review of the film Insidious, and very possibly a few others as well. Let's begin. Insidious. I saw this quite recently. I got it for my Christmas. It's quite a good Christmas present, a film about demons. Insidious it's about a boy who goes into a coma unexplained, and his parents slowly become aware that there's a presence around their son, and then it's a very cleverly crafted horror film. I won't tell you any more of the plot because it'd probably be spoiling it. I think there's a lot in the film that it's quite interesting just to find out for yourself. As horror films go, particularly modern horror films, this film was a very refreshing film to see. It was really inventive, and that's not something you can say about a lot of modern horror films. The last 10 years in particular have been really quite poor in terms of horror films. There's only been maybe the odd horror film here and there that's been, you could say, was okay, but this I think's probably one of the best of the last 10 years, but that's not saying much really. It's from it's from James Wan, who also directed the film Saw. Now, I didn't particularly like Saw, and I'm not talking about the sequels. I didn't like the first one, and the sequels, I've had to sit through some of them. I didn't particularly like them either. But the first Saw film, I didn't actually care for. I might discuss it in another video. So I was a bit sceptical about going into this film, but I must say I think that it's totally dissimilar to Saw. It's a completely different film. You almost wouldn't believe they were of the same director. As horror films go, it's got probably one of the most creepy, sinister atmospheres of any film that I've seen in recent years. It's got some very good suspense in scenes where you're almost paining yourself to look at the television. There's some really startling scenes where things just appear out of nowhere, and that is really scary. I won't deny that I jumped during those scenes. They were very well handled. The plot itself, I liked that it did something original. That's not something that you see recently. I mean, it's the stories of demons in a house. It's been done recently with like the Paranormal Activity films, and arguably you could say the first Paranormal Activity film did it better than this, but it's still very good. I think it's not shot from the camcorder point of view. By the way, it's a proper film. I liked some things about the plot. I liked that they addressed some of the horror cliches, and they didn't go through with them. The cliches include, throughout the film, like towards the beginning when the child's not in the coma, there's a few instances where the father or the mother or whoever runs upstairs to check on them, and the first thing they do is they turn on the lights. And that, I know that's simple, but that's not something you see in a lot of horror films. Usually they leave the lights off as like a cheap way of keeping the suspense going, trying to scare you. So that was refreshing to see that. The fact that there's a scene in the film where the mother character, she's just completely out of it really because of everything that's going on in the house, and she says to the father, we need to get out of here, this place is haunted, let's just go now. And the next thing you see is moving vans outside the house. They actually move to another house. Now in haunted house films, that's something that you never see. I mean, even Paranormal Activity, there's a scene in Paranormal Activity where they go, well, why don't we just move and then they're told, well, no, that wouldn't change a thing. Well, would it not be worth a try, really? Because that's always something you say when you watch haunted house films. Why do they not just move? And that's something they address here. They actually do move house, but of course the troubles follow them there. As horror films go, there's another cliche that they don't have, is that there's no real gore, which is always refreshing. I mean, gore just gets a bit tiresome, really, considering that in the last decade all the real boundaries that they had in place for what's acceptable and what's unacceptable has pretty much been broken. I mean, films like Saw and Hostel and the remake of I Spit in Your Grave, which I had the displeasure of seeing quite recently. I might do that in one of these future videos. But all those boundaries of horror and gore have been broken in the last decade, to the possible detriment of horror film quality. So it was refreshing to see that this had no gore in it. Well, the only scene that I can think of where there was gore was, there's some scenes that are quite well done where the demon in the film, it leaves like a bloody handprint on some bed sheets. That was quite chilling, and it isn't really gore. The cinematography of the film's quite good. All the colours are quite muted. It's quite pale, I suppose you could say. The only real time you see colours is when the demons are there, and well, it's only one demon, but there's ghosts and things as well. That's the only time you really see colour, and that's so that it really stands out. It's a bit of an obvious artistic technique, but it works well. The music score, at first it starts off quite good, quite interesting, quite creepy and mood setting. It's mostly violins, and as I said, it does start off creepy, but towards the end of the film you do feel as though you could strangle it. You really could. It's a cacophony of screeching violins, really, that's all it is. I mean, at first you're thinking, oh yeah, this could be interesting, this is quite creepy, quite unnerving. At the end, just shut up, that's what you're screaming at the television screen. But other than that, it was quite well conceived, and it did unsettle you at first. The opening sequence to the film was quite creepy, quite mood setting. I think the reason I liked it is because so few films nowadays even bother to have an opening credits sequence, and I can understand the argument, people want to get into the film right away, opening credits sequences are boring. I disagree. I think that it can be an ideal way to set the mood, like have the music, have images, or even shots to do with the film. It can really put you in the mood for it. I mean, not just horror films, you can have like children's films, Disney films, where they have the opening credits sequence really establish the mood. But no, a lot of films recently don't have opening credits sequences, so I thought that was a good, a positive quality about this film, and it was quite creepy and mood setting. Although I have praised this film so far, ultimately I would describe it as an effective horror film, not necessarily good. It's a popcorn horror film. It was made to be a blockbuster horror, and in that sense it was effective. I mean, I think in America it received the PG-13 rating, which means that I'm not sure. I think it's the under 13s can go and see it. It's the equivalent to maybe a 12A in the UK. So yeah, that was something that really opened up the market for the film, and it was designed as a blockbuster horror film, because I think they could have been subtler. I think this was a bit of a missed opportunity, even though it was in my opinion a very effective film. It was good for all intents and purposes, and I enjoyed it. But it was a bit of a missed opportunity. I think they could have been subtler. I would have liked to have seen maybe another director take it up and been able to craft the scenes to be even creepier than they actually were, and particularly the ending. The ending was a bit of a mess. I mean, I wasn't scared at all during the ending, and I'm not just saying that as someone who's seen a lot of horror films. I'm saying that the ending of the film was quite disjointed. The way they shot it was too fast for a horror film. Horror films need to be quite slowly shot. They can't have the camera cutting every 4 seconds or so, if you know what I mean. the demon of the film, the red-faced demon that you no doubt saw in the trailer, and there's clips on YouTube. It was scary at first, and if you've been having nightmares over that demon, if you've not been able to get to sleep at night because you're afraid it's going to jump out from under your bed, watch this film and watch it to the end, because by the end of the film it actually starts to get funny. Like, they have, I don't know if I'm spoiling this for you, this clip's also quite popular on YouTube, so you might have seen it anyway. It's the demon's sharpening its claws and basically dancing about to Tiptoe Through the Tulips, which is this song that's really annoying, really catchy, really sung by some high-pitched male or female, some androgynous singer. Oh god, it really killed any suspense that they had going, seeing the demon dance to this music. But anyway, I think that overall the film, I repeat what I said earlier, it's effective. There are some good scary scenes in it. If you're looking to get scared, you will. The acting's fairly decent. There's no standout performances really. The actors themselves they're overall quite bland and uninteresting, but they serve the purpose of the film well. So, as a rating, I would give this film a 7 out of 10. I think that's fairly reasonable. It's an effective horror film, and chances are you will be scared by it. But ultimately, it is a blockbuster horror, and some parts of it you just keep thinking that they could have done more with it. It's a bit of a missed opportunity. Most of the scary scenes are contained within the first half of the film. But I am recommending it. I would, if you like horror films, definitely see it. Otherwise, I would say still see it, because it's a good example of horror films in this decade doing something interesting, doing something different. And as horror films of the last 10 years go, it's quite good.